Ah, the supervillain. The hand-wringing egomaniacs who give our good-natured heroes a hard time. When a new superhero movie is announced, the first question is almost always, well, who's the villain? From the iconic Green Goblin to the often forgotten Malekith, the villain is as essential to the DNA of a Marvel or DC story as its titular hero. But what happens when the villains break off into their own stories? When we finally get a chance to see the world as our antagonists see it? Believe it or not, the solo villain movies and shows seem to be a relatively new phenomenon. We've had plenty of anti-hero movies and shows throughout the years, but it wasn't really until Venom 2018 that a Marvel or DC villain got a fully fledged project of their own, besides Catwoman. Since then, we've had quite a few, but they all seem to have one thing in common. One fatal flaw, if you will. They're not about villains. Almost every single villain project, from Morbius to Black Adam, turns our titular character into a hero. They might have a very slight edge to them, they might kill a guy, but there is always a worse person than them, someone who took it too far that they have to then stop, revealing to us all that they're just a big softy underneath. In the past month, we got 4 projects led by supervillains, and one of them is actually a villain show. Unlike its neighbors, the Penguin doesn't feel the need to show us that Oz is a cinnamon roll who's never done anything wrong in his life. They actually have the patience to remind us that there's a reason that the Penguin remains atop Batman's deadliest foes list. More on that in a bit. First, I'd like to do a lightning round of reviews on these past few villain projects that I didn't get to make full videos on. Spoilers for Agatha, Joker 2, Venom, and the Penguin. Bad. Bad, but I liked it. I don't know, it's a show. Actually good. Not to be a Matt Reeves shill, but it's a little known fact to the people in my life that I liked the last Batman movie we got quite a bit. So when a Penguin show was announced in that same universe, I was pretty sure it would be good. The thing that makes the Penguin so excellent is exactly what I mentioned. He is a supervillain through and through. You never forget just how evil this guy is, especially by the end of the series. The problem with these other villain projects is that they're pretty toothless. They have a tendency to take the bite out of these characters. I've previously gone on record saying I don't much like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, but Joker 2 only made that problem worse. I take no issue with Todd Phillips taking $200 million of WB's money to make a movie that basically says, y'all are stupid. But I take great offense to watching a boring movie. Joker 2 can only be described as an in-name-only adaptation of both Joker and Harley. They have pretty much nothing in common with their comic book counterparts. I don't think it's a slight against the audience that they wanted to watch a Joker movie where he actually does something. I take great issue with acting like people are stupid for wanting to see the Joker do Joker things. I think Todd Phillips has this idea in his head that he is above comic books, but you are still making a movie based on one. You are, whether you think so or not, directly profiting off the work of hundreds of comic writers and artists before you. To act like the character is stupid or that fans are stupid for wanting to see the character portrayed well, it's kinda dumb. The Phillips Joker movies seem to think that they've gotten to this deep, dark truth about the character, when in reality it's the same conclusion everyone came to about the Joker 20 years ago that we've since moved on from. To even call this a villain project is very generous. I do genuinely think that you can say a lot thematically while still having Joker and Harley do pretty villainous shit. And before I get off the subject, Lady Gaga and Joaquin both play their parts perfectly fine, and in another universe this could be a really good movie about the nature of the relationship between Joker and Harley. The Penguin works because it's not ashamed to have him act like the Penguin. He waddles, he wears a suit, he has a purple car. They ground all those things in reality, but he is still recognizable as the comic character. The show caught a lot of flack for changing his name to Oz Cobb. Even I thought it was stupid, but at the very least it is in service of the type of Penguin they're creating. This is not an old money guy. This is a poor guy, so Cobblepot doesn't exactly give that impression. But what is the reasoning behind having Harley go by Lee the entire time, besides being embarrassed of the source material? As for Agatha, I've seen a lot of people talking about how this is one of Marvel's better shows, and I don't know, man, it feels a lot like every other one they've ever made. It's not the worst one by any stretch, but I'm not planning to watch it ever again. There were a few glimmers of Agatha retaining her villainous nature throughout, all stuff that I was pretty intrigued by, but it kinda quickly got snuffed out by the larger plot. Not to mention the classic Marvel house style of it looking kinda ugly the entire time. At the end of the day, it's hard to call Agatha a villain in the MCU rather than an anti-hero. The show just does too much to paint her in a positive light. There is the reveal in the finale that she brought all these witches there to kill them, and that's an interesting idea, but if you compare that reveal to what Oz does to Victor in the finale, strangling the person who had been nothing but loyal to him the entire time, you can't put these two right next to each other and call them both villains. I think there is a way to make this Agatha show really compelling by actually ending it with her being the villain. Making your audience feel uncomfortable emotions because they like her. We love Catherine Hahn. Oh god, she's doing horrendous shit. I don't think Marvel has it in them to give us a villain that's just that. There always has to be a bigger fish. And maybe it's unfair to lump Venom in with these other projects. This version hasn't really ever been a villain. Plus, Venom hasn't been a villain in the comics in quite a long time. But I do think it's interesting to put him in here because, go back 10 years and ask someone to name 3 Marvel villains, and they'll probably say Venom along with, Magneto or Doctor Doom. Now tell that same person that there's a series of Venom movies, and they don't involve Venom being a bad guy, and they don't have Spider-Man in them. Venom's actually the hero. It shocks me that we haven't gotten a supervillain movie featuring a hero as the antagonist. It's such a simple idea, like a Scarecrow movie where Batman is the quote-unquote villain. A villain can still be empathetic without being redeemable, or a villain can be likable without being the good guy. Shows like Breaking Bad work because despite Walter being a shit person, you love to watch him and watch him get away with it. Why can't we nail this one thing when it comes to supervillains? We have some of the best villains in fiction, and instead of embracing the reasons they work, we rework them into our idea of how comic book movies are supposed to go. Venom, Morbius, Madam Web, Joker, Black Adam, Kraven the Hunter, Agatha. You're telling me we got all these villain projects and not one of them was interested in making their lead actually evil. Jury is out on Kraven, I guess, but the Penguin has breathed new life into this subgenre of comic book films. The Penguin has proven that you can make your character insufferable, grotesque, and evil and still build a great story around them. The Penguin still has an antagonist, and a great one at that, but it feels different from your other comic book media because it is different. I hope this means that at the very least we'll get more villain projects from DC, and I do hope Marvel can learn a thing or two from them. But what do you think? Maybe you think Agatha or Joker 2 was the best villain project of all time, and I'd love to hear why. And one other thing. That Witches Road song, it fucking sucks. Why do they have to keep singing it 100 times in the finale? I get it. I've heard the thing 500 times already. You don't need to keep singing it. It sucks anyway, and it's not very good.
Why so serious?